All right, in this video, I'm going to start a sort of discussion with you guys about a suppressor that you've seen here on the channel before, and particularly the current going price for this suppressor and why this suppressor is commanding such a premium that it is nowadays, and just a general overview of it because I don't think I've really shown it off that much on the channel before. So, getting right into it, this is the Knights Armament QDSS NT4 suppressor. So this is a very old suppressor design from Knights Armament, which until recently they were still selling in its original form. They've now replaced it, or soon will replace it, with a seemingly 3D printed version of it that kind of keeps the same aesthetic, but is not true to the original suppressor, just in terms of the overall design. So with that announcement from Knights Armament showing off the new version of the suppressor, that kind of kickstarted an increase in prices. Also, the general availability of these over the past few years has kind of just steadily increased the price of these suppressors to the point where they're going for astronomical amounts on sites like Gunbroker. And at first glance, it really doesn't make any sense. This is a very old, outdated design. Knights Armament themselves, along with many other companies, have made what I consider to be superior suppressors. So, just for information's sake, I wanted to tell you guys my thoughts on this and why I think that the suppressor is commanding such a premium. Number one is just going to be the limited availability of these suppressors. Again, Knights Armament is going away from the original QDSS NT4 design to a new updated design. And people who are into cloning service rifles like myself are very familiar with the suppressor, and the suppressor is integral to a lot of different clone builds. Everything from Mark 18/CQBR rifles, even up to newer rifles like the 416A5 in use by some Tier 1 groups within the Marine Corps. These are actually still being issued on brand new rifles like that. So, typical Marine Corps fashion, keeping with tradition, they're sticking with their older suppressors for whatever reason. Quick note, you guys have seen this suppressor on my channel before, but when you last saw it, it was black. I have since then had it Cerakoted. I use the High Temp series Cerakote, and this is Magpul Flat Dark Earth. I actually tried a few different coatings before I settled on this one. I tried Norell's Moly Coat and some others, and just wasn't happy with the results, wasn't happy with the durability. And so the High Temp C-Series Cerakote seems to have done the job. And the Magpul FDE, I think, very closely matches Knights Armament's factory taupe color. So for those wondering, you have seen the suppressor before, it just has a new coating. And I had this coated by Kyle over at the Armorer's Fix. So follow him on Instagram, I'll leave his Instagram down below. Did a great job on it, very nice even coating. Basically brought the suppressor, back to life. Looks like new, even though the baffles may not necessarily look like they're new. It looks like a new can though, and I'm super happy with it. So really quickly, we'll just talk about the design features of this suppressor. And I apologize, I'll have to cut out the part where I actually mount it, otherwise YouTube will demonetize me. But all right, so you can see once the suppressor is mounted, like I said, this is a very old design. And it's one of the, first, I think, reasonably good quick detach designs. Quick detach in the sense of, today's market, where you can quickly take this on and off the gun in a practical way during use. But it uses this gate latch system where this gate latch just drops down and locks it onto the flash hider. Although with this being an old design, there is quite a bit of play still in it. And so this does a couple of things. One, it does slightly, in my experience, change your point of impact, but not much, not enough to really matter. But whether you sight in the gun like this and then shoot it with the suppressor slightly tilted, it'll move it just a tiny bit, but overall, still very, very effective. And again, I'll take this off. Okay, that's gonna be annoying, I can already tell. So you can see this little kind of notch that's cut out of this Knights Armament NT4 flash hider. There's actually a little pin inside the suppressor that indexes on that notch, And you can see this angle right here. What happens is as you twist the suppressor and that pin rides that angle, it actually pushes the suppressor off the flash hider to break any carbon locking. That, along with these kind of ridges that are built into the suppressor, they act as kind of carbon cutters, and they help break up all that carbon lock that you get after shooting the suppressor for extended periods of time. So that's the mounting system in a nutshell. Not too much going on there. Of course, it has this shroud on the outside, which is not necessarily a heat shroud. It's not going to allow you to take off the suppressor whenever it's, you know, pretty hot. The shroud gets hot pretty much just as fast as the suppressor itself. But it adds a lot of strength to the suppressor. So I have done numerous full auto mag dumps with this can. I've never had an issue with it durability wise. But yeah, it gets too hot to take off, just like most other cans. So don't be fooled into thinking this is some kind of heat shield that's going to let you grab onto it. So as far as sound performance goes on the NT4, I'll say this. For many, many years, people have said that these don't really meter well. And when I say that, I mean actually measuring them with a sound meter. Compared to some other cans, they don't meter quite as quiet, but newer testing by third parties has actually revealed that these do have a lot of sound characteristics that previously were not really quantifiable, but now they are, or they have been quantified. Things like the sound wave shape and the actual tone of the suppressor. In my experience, these are a very comfortable suppressor to shoot, even without ear protection. Not something I would recommend doing all the time, but in one of these clips that I'll throw in here, I actually did forget my ear pro while I was recording somebody else doing a mag dump with this. And it didn't leave my ears ringing. There was no pain or anything associated with it. Which I can't say the same for a lot of other 5.56 suppressors that supposedly meter better than this one. So I will say, given the age of the suppressor, it is pretty quiet. It's about as quiet as the new 5.56 offerings from Knights Armament. I have shot this side by side with a full-size QDC 5.56 can, and there is no discernible difference in sound or tone. So anyway, so moving on to the price of these. I'll start off by saying that back in, I think, 2017 or 2018, I paid about $1,400 for this can. And back then I remember thinking, wow, that's a lot for a 5.56 can, especially an old, outdated, kind of heavy can. With the suppressor and the mount together, it's, I believe, slightly heavier than a Surefire RC2 can with its mount. Just barely, but it is slightly heavier. But yeah, back then I remember thinking that that was pretty expensive, and now that would be the deal of the decade. These have been bringing, you know, 2, 3, even 4 times MSRP, which is insane to think about. I mean, I get it is supply and demand. You know, that's always going to be a thing, is if you can't get them, there's usually somebody who's willing to pay more than you are for them. And then the cloning aspect and just the historical aspect of these suppressors. I mean, if you want to have a true clone of a lot of different rifles that are popular within the cloning community, these are kind of a must-have on a lot of them. So, not to say that that justifies the price or that you would be smart to pay that price. I think it is kind of foolish to pay what some people are for this can, even given the historical aspect. But that's just how things are right now, and it doesn't look like it's going to change anytime in the future. So those of you out there that have one of these cans, I'd recommend probably hanging on to it and, you know, not view it so much as an investment, but as a somewhat historical piece that you get to enjoy. And before anyone asks, I should have covered this earlier. I don't know if the Marine Corps or other U.S. military users of the NT4 are going to switch to the new updated NT4 design, or switch to something like the QDC or something entirely different. But I will give my thoughts here on that. So my sneaking suspicion is that cans like the NT4, the Surefire RC, and RC2, over the next decade or two, we're going to see a push away from these traditional baffle stack cans, Because while they do have superior sound performance in general, not always, but in general, they have a superior sound reduction performance over flow-through designs or lower back pressure designs. I do think there's going to be more of an emphasis on reducing the rates of cancer within service members. That was one aspect that was brought up in the NGSW program, where the military adopted the new SIG Spear and some other SIG weapon systems, along with SIG flow-through design suppressors that are supposed to reduce the gas blowback of the weapon system and reduce the amount of toxic elements being, sprayed into the shooter's face, essentially. So everything's a trade-off. You can either have the best sound performance, or you can have the lowest back pressure, or you can have somewhere in the middle. Most suppressors kind of float somewhere in the middle. But I think we're going to see more of a push towards that low back pressure end of things. And from another aspect, less back pressure means less wear and tear on your weapon system. So with how much the military is currently spending on their new acquisitions, I'd imagine they would want to pair it with a suppressor that's not going to cause excessive wear and, cause a shortened lifespan if they can help it. So that's just my thoughts. I may be wrong. I'm sure that if I end up being wrong, somebody will come back to this video in 5 or 10 years when the NT4 renews its contract for the 11th time, and they'll let me know. So anyway, I appreciate you guys watching. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave them down in the comment section below. I look forward to the discussions that will be had down there. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, where you can check out all of my upcoming projects and all of my projects that are kind of in the works as they progress. And I'll see you guys next time.